Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. Thank you for taking the time this evening, right, to join us for this discovery on how Power BI and AI can help with statistical analysis within the finance environment. So first, I would like to thank you all for making the time. And secondly, as a housekeeping, we have switched everybody's cameras off, but and everybody is on mute, but you should be able to unmute yourself and ask questions if you would like to. At the same time, we have enabled Q&A as well. So if you need to ask any Q&A, any questions, anything in the chat, please feel free to pop in your questions. Because again, anybody who's seen or heard from me on LinkedIn previously, you'd know I do like an interactive session. It is not a one-sided conversation. So I always prefer if there is a two-way conversation. So, and it might not be the full hour as well. Let's see how we could get through the material and then we can take it from there essentially, basically. So without any further delay, let's start. So we are here to discuss basically how to leverage AI in Power BI for statistical analysis. First of all, for those who don't know me, my name is Tejas Parikh. I am an MBA in finance. I am a CIMA qualified chartered as well. I am a professional consultant, Anaplan modeler, and basically Power BI is certified with Microsoft Power BI analyst as well. So from that perspective, I have made a transition from being a finance and a business person into the technology space, and hence I bring to the table the best of both worlds essentially. Uh, where do I come from? I have worked with AC Nielsen, GE Healthcare, Vodafone, achieved quite a bit of things with them, including back in the day, right in 2000. This is like what 2008, 9, when there was no Power BI and stuff, building using Access databases and pivot tables connected to them to actually be able to analyze data in the finance environment. So I have always had that knack of building tools and systems in place even back in 2008 9 to solve basically financial analytical challenges instead of just focusing on Excel books. So from with that, then slowly fast forward to 2018 is when I established Action Business Consulting. So I'm the founder director. I have a small team, people onshore and offshore who help me out in delivering these projects. We've worked with businesses like Dixon, Cinemedia, Unilever, Xerox. Curve is one of our most recent customers, Greenwich and Bexley Community Hospice as well. We're working with all these people to either deliver CPM solutions or Power BI solutions for them to help them do better analytics within their business, do better forecasting, better challenge the business, better performance management, better support business with decision making and things like that. So that's been the purpose of basically Akshat Business Consulting, where we are a FP&A transformation business focusing on basically process improvement, technology upgrade, and basically skill set of improvement within businesses for them to be able to better drive strategic partnership from finance towards the business. This is one slide which I always would like to share. So it is very important as for us as finance leaders, whether we want to talk about AI, talk about automation, talk about machine learning, anything else, all of those things have a fundamental structure requirement in terms of the technology stack. When the more I speak to finance leaders across actually globally, I find that yes, while there is some appreciation of basically ERP and you require a good ERP and things like that, there seems to be missing an overall strategy of the finance tech stack. So without that, to try and do AI or try to do machine learning or try to do automation is like leveraging half or less than 20% of the capabilities essentially. So getting this tech stack correct is critical for a business to be able to actually really benefit from the potential of development which is happening around us at the minute. The way this tech stack should be designed, right? At the minute, you will find that sales and marketing own CRMs, finance owns the ERP, HR will own the headcount or HRM system, whatever is there in the organization. Operations teams will own timesheets or project tracking sheets, or like in case of Greenwich and Bexley Hospice, the patient records and things like that. So but all of these are still operating in silos, right? They're not working together. Even within finance, we have seen in businesses where ERP is not what is generating invoicing, for example. So they have got an invoicing tool which is separate. They have, PO tool which is separate. So there are a lot of individual tools which they may be good in their own right, but they are really not adding enough value to the business until you build the whole tech stack around them. And what is the tech stack is this. You need to, a finance leader needs to work with basically their CTO, you call it, CIO, you call it, whatever, change, transformation leadership, IT department, different names, but essentially the same people, to build something like a data lake. We do that as well. We support our customers to build something like that as well. Some of them build their own stuff and we work on top. But this is important because then you can start connecting these together. Like one of our recent projects, we at Curve, essentially, we had the issue of, okay, I've got revenue from the ERP, but we were not able to break it up by customer because the invoicing is done out of a different system. So then we worked with the data lake, the Azure team, to make sure that they are able to create the relationship between the ERP data and the invoicing data to get the insight of, okay, this is my customer breakdown of revenue, my cost of goods sold broken down by revenue, and suddenly you now start getting gross profit by customer, which then becomes actually an interesting conversation, right? Of not only service profitability by customer, but profitability by service line, profitability by product. And that suddenly becoming a very interesting conversation. So building that data lake then enables, right, of the conversation we are going to have today, of using Power BI to do AI or analytics and things like that. To be able to do that, you need to bring a larger set of data. One of the questions you do sometimes get is, oh, so can I not connect BI directly to my ERP? Oh, yes, you can. So let's be clear. You could directly connect Power BI to your Business Central, to your Sage 200, to QuickBooks, to Navision, and a whole host of other, Oracle, SAP, so a whole host of your ERPs. But then you are only getting the financial information. Whereas this is a business intelligence tool, remember. So this is about working with across the business. It's not a financial intelligence tool alone. So as finance leaders, we should be looking to actually work across the business to bring data from other parts of the business alongside the financial data to really start, delving into the detail of what is the art of the possible, essentially. So that is the way so this is an important piece to actually be successful with that. And then obviously on the side of it, we also work with CPM providers of all sizes. Literally, we have CPM solutions which are like 500 pounds a month to like 20,000, 50,000, 20,000, 30,000 a year. So you get a lot of CPM tools these days, right? There are different sizes for different sizes, different budgets, different complexity. Based on that, you can work with that, and we help selection as well as implementation. So that then starts again adding a layer of intelligence around your business intelligence and your insights and your analytics to really benefit from basically AI. And if you bring this along with it, then your CPM or EPM tool as well is being fed not only with your financials, but your operational metrics in your CPM, EPM tool or your budget plan performance management tool. Therefore, you can actually do driver-based budgeting, scenario modeling, and stuff like that, which can again feed your business intelligence further. Why is this important? Because this as if you are fully focused on strategy accounting, I'll say first, it helps you make your month end faster because you have got better visibility, faster visibility. It enables analytics at a click of a button. Okay. It helps actual performance management in terms of, instead of talking about revenue is down or profitability is down or cost is up, you are now actually talking in terms of how, what is the business operational reason why this is happening, who, you actually understand the drivers behind it, because you can then see, okay, timesheet data, there have been more, say, temp staff versus what was in the budget. And therefore, you can understand that, yes, my business intelligence tool is telling me that I've got more cost, but it's also telling me it is because you had more temp staff versus permanent staff compared to the budget. And BI tools can start doing, have started doing things like that. I will show you, we will talk about it as we go along. So that's the beauty of the tech stack that I am proposing here. So because we have seen basically businesses where they lose historical data because they have gone from Sage to Business Central, or they have gone from, I don't know, Sage to QuickBooks or Navision or whatever else they have moved into. So by having a data lake, you will A, never lose your data. B, you can then connect your data with other operational businesses, and therefore, in a true sense, have a MIS, management information system, in place, which can then be the platform on which your intelligent planning and performance management and insights and analytics can be built upon, which is critical. So that is the way to think about it. And it's really important for finance leaders to recognize this and plan their business forward as based on this understanding. So who is this webinar for today? Today it is for finance leaders, for basically business owners, decision makers, anybody who's looking to actually up the financial analysis game to make sure that they are adding value rather than just presenting numbers. Okay, there is revenue is down by 2% has never benefited in any decision making so far in that I have seen. So that's where today's session is different, of trying to understand what more can be done. Okay, what we'll be doing is we'll be doing two sections. First section will be dashboards. So I've got basically 5 dashboards I will be demonstrating to you of how you can have AI driven commentary in Power BI. You can have cohort analysis of churn, for example, businesses which are, business services businesses and things like that. How can you understand churn to improve your forecasting ability? Look at how complaints, so how these two then can be combined into a single report side kind of a structure. So this one is a complaints report findings report, but you can even have a churn findings report. You could have, revenue profitability, customer profitability report. So step number 1 and step number 2 will then explain how this one can be built and brought together. Performance management scenarios will then talk about, okay, real life live modeling of what will happen if I do X, Y, and Z in terms of price rises, volume drops, or that kind of a modeling. And then looking at basically relationship between product and product segment, products and customer segments, to see how profitability is impacted, how revenue is impacted. Again, this is statistical analysis to understand the regression between the two, and what is the correlation, what products are highly correlated to certain market segments and certain customers and stuff like that. Again, all of this is in Power BI, so it is not like analyst has to download data from 500 different places and then collate them in Excel and then present to the CFO once in like 3 months, and then you are done. These, if designed correctly, can be then actually be used on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis for a business to look at and drive decision making. We will then, I would like if we can get a bit more engagement around, use cases. I have got 3 use cases here, which again kind of relate to that piece. But I would like if you guys had any questions or, thought processes around, okay, once I see this, once you understand and see the demonstration that I'm about to do, if I would really highly appreciate if you come about asking questions of, oh, can we do this as well? What about this? This is a particular challenge in the business. We can have an open conversation. Obviously, no obligation discussion to understand, what are the different use cases you can actually use this tech stack for. So without delaying this any further, let's jump into the demonstration. Let me get that up. Yes. So this is the first one which I was referring to of these comments of at 97. The November month has the highest number of customer exits in the current year, and it is 3,300% more than February, which is the lowest month. So Power BI has gone, identified these ups and tops and bottoms on its own, calculated the percentage on its own, and is telling us that information. Okay, it is gone and talked about customer exits and total customer per month. So it's starting to make correlations on its own. It can be more intelligent than that. This is just something basic because this is a very small sample data which we have. When we do these with things with customers, obviously, because we get AR data and we get basically marketing data, you could even now start talking about marketing cost and basically say, for example, marketing cost per month compared to exits per month. With is there a correlation? Is there no correlation? You see, things like that. You could start talking about customer. You could start talking about total customers are higher and active members. So you can talk about active members, inactive members, people who are using your service, the dashboard. This particular one is because they are selling online dashboard services to businesses. So how many people are actually actively using the subscription which is being sold to them? So it's talking about active subscriptions and inactive members. So from all those perspectives, it starts giving the business insights, and you can see there's like a lot of insights that have been automatically generated. Each of these comments have been structured by by us to make sure that it remains updated. And if you now just for a minute focus on this first line, right? And if I change the region from all to Germany, for example, there you go. So again, now all these comments have changed to a particular region. We can change it to France again. We can have that specific regional conversation. We can have status of active, inactive, and we can start looking at, commentary around that. Okay, so there is direct correlation calculation happening in the backend on its own. It can then be used in real time with your business leaders to talk about how the customer is churn behavior is happening within that particular business environment, in that region, in that customer segment, for example, in a particular year. Again, this is at a year level. You could have it by month clearly, and things like that. So the point is, this is all being calculated. All these insights are being calculated by Power BI on its own based on, I can show you this, right? So we can go here and we can start designing what we want to ask. Okay, this is on exiting of customers. We can talk about, so we can add another dynamic so of what we want to add as a comment in here. So we could ask a question and that would then start coming up across here as a comment on top. Okay, and things like that. So these are things which can be automatically done. It doesn't need, and then they will keep coming on. So once you design a question and you say, okay, Power BI, I want you to tell me every month correlation between this and this. I want you to tell me drop rates or increase rates, things like that. Power BI will go in across your active customer database, your churn database and things like that, or your geography, and start giving you that kind of insights on its own without you having to do the work. All you'd have to do is start reading those comments and then talking to the business. Okay, this is what's happening in the business. What are we going to do about it? So it's much more focused on basically performance management and analytics with the business rather than basically doing the work in Excel and laboriously putting everything together every time. So that is automated commentary element of this. The other one which I really like, this one is basically this is about cohort of basically customer churn and customer retention. So obviously churn and retention are opposites of each other. So this is 12 people have churned out of 641. So you've got like 2% churn. And as you can see, because this data set, I think, is 2019. So 2 years back, basically, what your customers that you have acquired, roughly in 2 years' time, you'd expect anywhere between every month, almost 2% of them to start churning. Then as you come down, you see the churn rate. This is an anomaly, but otherwise, you see uh, basically churn rates coming down. Okay. And that essentially means that your latest customers, you are less likely to churn. But at the same time, if you realize also here, this section, we see that customers that are less than 12 months old, either they will churn and therefore they will go away faster in terms of within 3 to even up to 10%, right? So this can then be broken down. For this particular graph, we had to take away the data, but basically you break it up by service line. And then you see, okay, which service line has got higher churn versus which service line has lower churn. So when you're modeling your future recurring or non-recurring revenue, you can actually start looking at recurring revenue and say, okay, I am expecting this particular customer in this particular customer category, this particular product category to churn by this much, given my historical data. So that modeling then starts to make a lot more sense and a lot more realistic. This data, and obviously at the same time, the retention rate is exactly the other way around. So in recent months, you'd expect 100% retention rate, but older months, as you said, as we talked about, right? You expect 2% to 17% basically loss of customer. So this is information which I have seen actually one of my customers do this manually to model out was it 3 or 5 years basically forecast for their PE owners because they were trying to value the business. Uh, but when he was doing this manually, instead of that, I was like, why can't we do something like this? Then it will give you this kind of live information on an ongoing basis, which then actually made his life a lot more simpler because he just had to pick stuff from here and into his model, and straight away he started getting answers. So instead of trying to do this cohort after cohort, basically it is possible to automate these things and actually keep a track on over time. Are we becoming worse in terms of churn or not? Okay, just some slides on top to look at the data because there is real data behind this. By month, onboarding date, exit date, exit month, how many days we retain the customer. If they have retained them still and there is no exit date, then it's basically forever, right? They're still there. So you can start looking at even the length for which a customer stays. On an average, if a customer is acquired 2 years back, how long do you expect them to stay? A customer acquired 1 year back, how long do you expect them to stay? And then again, break that up by service line, break that up by geography, break that up by customer or customer industry, or a customer segment. And then you suddenly start looking at a lot of insights around it. We couldn't share all the data, but that is all available essentially. That is the art of the possible. If you look at, if we then bring it together, right? This is again chart data, which is essentially you start looking at where is the complaints in the business, where are the customers based who are delivering us, making more complaints versus less complaints. So the year is where you've got 20% of customers who are who you've got complaints from, and what is a ratio of female customers versus male customers to understand again what is creating customer dissatisfaction. If designed correctly, it can look almost like this, right? Where you've got a full page, and you can even have findings which are then automatically updated for you. Because remember, in the first dashboard, we looked at basically commentary being generated automatically. So you can then have all these kind of commentary basically then generated for us automatically. Nobody needs to physically sit down and do all of this. Okay, then in fact the focus would much more be around how do we use this information to basically make decisions in the business, improve business processes to improve customer satisfaction, which will help with the churn rate and retention rates of the business as we go along. And again, all of this is automated. It can be fed live from basically customer systems, and therefore no finance person would ever have to sit and do the work. Essentially, they would then have to focus much more on what are we doing with the output or the analytics that we are getting out of this. That would be the driver or the discussion point around the business. Because again, there's a famous saying that if you today, a lot of businesses and finance functions have a challenge of they spend 80% of their time essentially doing data analysis and data cleansing and data manipulation and analysis instead of driving decision making. So these three are much more focused on the fact that you can then automate the data manipulation, data cleansing, and data and even a large section of data analysis. Therefore, finance function can actually spend a lot more time driving decisions across the business in the business essentially. Okay, so this is another one which, if I bring this flat, if my pricing is flat, my demand or volume to demand is flat, then you can see the black and the white line are exactly the same. Basically, meaning my current year is going to be exactly same as last year, which obviously in real life is never going to be. So we have a strategy. Let's drop price by 3%, and I'm expecting volume to go up by 5%. Okay. What does that mean? That just means I'm going to get 52.3 million of revenue versus 51.42 million of revenue, for example. Okay. Or here, basically, scenario is telling me 45.7, whereas basically last year was 44.9. Now, is that additional revenue worth the decision you are going to make? So instead of, again, taking tons of Excel books, putting all your prior year information in there, and then trying to do this line by line, product by product, and seeing what the output looks like, you could start doing this pretty much in real time. So, like for example, for product 1, 2, and 3, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to increase volume, drop price. Straight away, I have my model done. My answer is there. I am ready. Okay, it tells me what it is going to be, and I can work with it. Right, it is telling me even by customer what is the likely additional revenue I can make out of by doing what I'm talking about. Okay, then if I remove these three and say, okay, product 4, 6, and 7, I am going to keep basically volume the same because I'm not expecting the volume to go up, but I know I have a niche. I have got basically, a USP, so I can actually increase price by 3%. Okay, what does that mean? Per quarter, what is the increased revenue will I get? By customer, what is the increased revenue will I get? How does by channel, what does that mean? Things like that. I can then start having these kind of modeling things. And I don't know if any of you can relate, but as when I was working in the industry with FP, being the head of FP&A and stuff like this, stuff to model things like this used to take like a lot of time and effort for somebody to almost 2 to 3 weeks to be able to do by all dimensions in terms of customer, in terms of country, in terms of channel, in terms of products and things like that. It takes a lot of time and effort, whereas this can be done actually ongoing live, and therefore to use directly the output to make decisions of, is this what the product managers, for example, want? Is that the purpose? So again, I could keep going, right? There's like 23 products in there. So we can talk about a lot of products, but essentially what I'm trying to, and again, you could do it even by top products. Okay, my top products, meaning they are highly profitable products or highest revenue products. I am going to leave the price the same, but I'm expecting the volume to go up just by 1% because they are my already top performing products. What does that mean? Things like that. Now these are top performing, okay performing or poor performing products. You could even have product categories that my I don't know, my tires are going to sell more, but my cycles are going to sell less, for example. I don't know, things like that. So you could do a segment. Imagine this can be a segment of products or services as well, right? And based on that, you could do modeling of what does that look like. It can be literally that level of analytics can be automated and organized for you to not have to spend hours and hours behind an Excel book and actually spend more time with the business to do business partnering, to do basically value add conversation. Okay. Understanding basically the customer. So this is where again you've got sales by product and profit and then the margin. But then again, you've got customers. So you can start looking at particular customers, for example. So what is this customer buying? And then all your graphs get updated. Okay, this customer is buying these products. What is the margins I'm making on that customer? I can combine, again, at this minute, we've just taken a sample, but you could have a segment on top of the all the client names. Okay, my public sector customers are this much, my private sector is this, my, I don't know, financial services is this, my hospitality customers are that. You could have that kind of an analysis as well. You could also then, what I find always interesting is then start looking at, your top customers by year. Well, you can also start doing correlation regression analysis between your customer segment or industry and your product portfolio to see which industry, what products or what services are being purchased the most of. Where is the correlation really high? What is the regression relationship between them? Meaning, if what can you sell more or cross sell further within that customer base? Okay, so those kind of analysis can again be automated within Power BI for Power BI to give you straight outputs of what to sell to which customer, essentially. Therefore, as finance functions, then you can start driving that conversation in the business of if we want to expand revenue, if we want to achieve the growth rate of 2% or 5% next year, these are the sectors we need to focus on. These are the services we should deliver, or these are services which are not profitable, and therefore we should think about dropping them, for example. Okay, they don't. Again, those are things should the strategic decision making is yes doesn't happen every day, but whether the strategy is materializing or not needs to be monitored on an ongoing basis. So tools like Power BI can actually start helping you with, getting that kind of output on a regular basis to understand A, whether strategy is being implemented correctly, and B, and more importantly, then do you need in 3 or 6 months time in your 3+9 or 6+6 to revisit your strategy or revisit your tactical and operational plans to make sure that you're delivering your working towards your strategy, essentially. So these are dashboard examples. I mean, there are some of them. Obviously, we cannot talk about the customer data behind it, but this is we've tried to whitewash as much as we could have. When we have delivered these to customers, I mean, apologies, but I have to show that real life, basically FP&A leaders have understood that they have, benefited from this. So this Paul was the one who was trying to do the cohort analysis, and we had to help them with the cohort segregation for him to be able to do the business valuation that he was trying to do. Right here is where we basically improved month end for them just by leveraging automation to look at outliers within the business. So literally graphs which would tell you which are the biggest outlier transactions, which are the document numbers which are the biggest outlier transactions, and therefore as a controller, he was able to then go in and quickly check of why are these valid, will they stand audit and things like that. And what makes us different as Akshar Business Consulting from basically other providers is the fact that we also provide a lot of training when we are basically delivering these solutions. So that means people actually don't have to come back to us as consultants for every small little change, because one of the big concerns I get from finance leaders is they just you will go and implement all of this and you will go away, but who the hell in my business is going to maintain this on an ongoing basis? And what we tend to do is we tend to provide a lot of on-the-job training while we are implementing these solutions, again because there is a two-way communication. One is we ask the question, what is the use case? How will this help you make better decisions? What's the insight are you looking for? Things like that. So we understand the business, and then when we implement that automation or that AI solution around it, we teach the customer, teach our client, basically employees, of look, this is what we've done, this is how we have done this, does this make sense, does this answer your question, and things like that. So they actually know what we have done, means when we leave they can actually make almost good your first line support in terms of automation and first line support in terms of changes and updating. They can do it on their own. They don't need to come back to us, which is the purpose of how we like to deliver this. That is the reason, that is very close to my heart, because I come from industry and I always hated, basically consultants who come in and basically implement and then go away, because I'm not learning anything out of this. And if you go away, if this model stops working, how the hell am I going to use this? So that is one thing. As I establish this business, I have made sure that we don't do to our customers. We make sure they learn, so they gain confidence in using these tools, automation tools, as they go along, essentially. Uh, so use case discussion, we can. So one of the things that you can do with sales forecasting, we looked about churn, we looked at cohort. You can also look at how marketing strategies are impacting your sales forecast, right? So if you're a B2C business, is where we have seen that a lot, right? In a retail environment where promotional activities are directly driving changes in basically consumption and therefore in basically revenue. So there you can again have a model which says, okay, marketing strategy of, say, for example, advertising on TV versus basically cold calling customers, or advertising in a newspaper. I mean, I don't know who reads newspapers these days, or stands in a market. So those kind of situations, what does that impact on revenue? Which one gives you bigger revenue growth, which has got higher correlation, uh, and therefore you can then model in that if we spend X amount on marketing strategy, this is a Y amount of sales output we should get based on your historical trend of at least, we would say, 12 to 18 months. Minimum 12 to 18 months of data is generally required for you to get a good, reasonably decent forecast out of that. Uh, Okay, and that obviously then helps you optimize your inventory management as well, because then you're not uh, just piling up inventory. Customer segmentation. This is one thing which which is really close, because it applies to B2C as well as B2B businesses, where you segment customer by industry or by public sector, private sector, or different segments, size, by basically location and things like that, to look at what services and what marketing campaigns are more effective based on the size. Like, for example, smaller companies or medium-sized companies, are they looking more for promotion and more for service, or are they looking more for discounts? Larger companies, are they looking much more on when they respond better when our ads talk about how long we have been in operation, versus how do they respond better when we give them long-term service contracts, for example. So you can start looking at these kind of conversations to actually understand how you can serve the segments of your customer base particularly in detail. Okay, this is all. You can use regression analysis and correlation analysis directly from a Power BI, which Power BI will do for you automatically, and you can then start looking at insights which can pop out of it. Anomaly in transaction, which is the one I was referring to previously with Alex, where basically you can start, Power BI will start telling you this document number, this value is too big for your normal T&E, travel and expenses, for example. Okay, so then as a controller or as a head of accounting, you can go and investigate that just one or two claims and see, okay, does this really make sense? I mean, it could be valid, it's just fine, but it then helps you identify your clear outliers and clear risk, or uh, payment terms, or your, generally it is useful in cost case, sometimes in revenue cases, because is your rev rec looking correct? Okay, because normally in a B2B size of businesses, your rev rec tends to be on a trickle basis. So if suddenly you start getting outliers, it starts highlighting to you anomalies in your trend, and therefore then you can go and investigate to just make sure that the assumptions are correct and is audit proof, essentially, and you will stand the test of auditing. That's essentially kind of stuff that you can automate within Power BI on its own without anybody having to spend time on it. So now we are like almost 44 minutes at the top of the hour. So I am now going to stop talking, because I would like people to open up, ask questions. If you have Q&A, if you are shy of talking, then you can pop your question in Q&A. You can, pop your question in a chat. Give us feedback. What do you think so far? Does any of this make sense? Does any of this sound relatable in terms of you have used this? Yes, Steve. You can unmute yourself, my friend. You can unmute yourself. Yeah, you're not able to unmute yourself.
Sorry, got there in the end. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
So,
Steve.
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. The question I had was more about the non-financial data that you might try and integrate. Yeah, which is one of the issues you get sometimes on the tech side. Yeah, and bottlenecks or delays. Do you find that what you use sometimes is Power BI? Almost you ingest some of the data, model it within Power BI itself, so that you can do the proof of concept to actually get the buy-in to scale it up then in a data warehouse environment where you'd have to do things like manage the data temporally, etc.
Absolutely. You have hit the nail on the head, Steve. That is exactly how the right way to sell it to a business. So if you are trying to do no operational data combining with financial data, but you need to do a POC, take it in Excel. There is no harm. Take it in Excel, bring it into Power BI, do the modeling, and show the business the value that can be added. But once that is done, this is where we need to draw a line and push the business to implement a more robust solution like this. Okay, of a data lake or a cloud
Yeah.
solution of sorts. Because
So a follow-on
uh,
question from that then I'd have, or related to it, sorry for interrupting, is within the data lake, do you then treat the data rather than the pure data lake? Yeah, treat it as more like what people are describing as a lake house. So you make a distinction between that data, which is more experimental and therefore shouldn't be like a schema on write, or that which typically in a historical transactional type database environment would have been schema on, right? So I'm thinking, okay, is that a valid customer, or is it a valid geographical segment? All that kind of validation that you want to happen, or some kind of sense check, so you're not ingesting poor quality data.
spot on again. So these days, Azure and AWS and stuff like Jet Analytics and things like that actually can do your full ETL for you. So is that a valid customer or not? Is that basically just a variation of the other customer name, right? So you will have, typically you get basically ERP data giving you a customer name, and CRM data, same customer is slightly different. One is limited, one is LTD dot, things like that. So all those kind of things you can actually tidy up in the data lake environment itself. And therefore you don't have to repeatedly do this over and over again.
Good. Yeah, at low cost, obviously, because yeah,
No,
you do the real impactful stuff that is relatively quick win, and therefore you mitigate the risk that you're going to have issues. Yeah.
exactly. And then this is permanently done, right? So once you tell Azure that this and this is actually the same customer, and once it is there, then it is there. Then it is never going to go away. So it is solved forever. So what we again experience is when you do an implementation, yes, there's a lot of tidy up to do. It takes time and it takes effort. But then on a monthly basis, how many new customers, how many new mistakes can happen? Because once the business has gone through this kind of a behavior and cleaning exercise, the business knows that the CRM name and the ERP name should be same or similar. They start to behave in a better manner because they have seen the problems that it can arise and the value it brings if you are better behaved, if that makes sense. And I think it is the latter part of the value that they see of the better behavior is what actually helps change behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
It's
I
more
mean,
than the
it's
stick,
very
it's the
powerful,
carrot.
the potential that it has. Yeah, and the ability to expose that quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the carrot that you get, right? So like recently with one of our customer implementation, we got every invoice number, and therefore we got all the customer names against the invoices. But then you realize that all the revenue rec journals don't have a customer ID. So now I have a whole revenue, like 60, 70, 80% is all from invoicing. Therefore, I can tell you what the customer name is and you can start doing analytics around it. But 20% is journals, and it doesn't have a customer ID of sorts. So therefore, you can't do analytics around it. Now that feedback from FP&A to financial controlling or accounting team, that when you do this journal, of course you have a backup behind that. They have backup, so they know who the customer is, what the service is. So instead of just putting it in the backup, put it in the journal. Put the customer ID in there. Yes, the journal becomes a little bit longer, but then the value to the business of analysis on a dashboard is worth it. The business case adds itself
I
up.
get that completely. It's about tidying up the process because they see the impact of the degradation of data by not following the rigors that would apply in a typical upstream system. Sorry,
Exactly. And
I'm
this is a
probably
record
talking
to.
too much. I'll let others speak.
No. You are completely fine. I'm sure others are benefiting as well. So this is the whole record to report conversation, right? Where what you record is what you are reporting on. So if you don't put the details in the record, you're not going to report on it. It's not complicated, is it? Alpesh had a question on pull market economic benchmark data for some insights. Of course you can, Alpesh. So I'm assuming you are coming from a financial services kind of a thought process. So yes, like in financial services, you could have economic growth rate by quarter. You could have basically your unemployment rates. You could have interest rates tracked directly from Bank of England website or from whatever website you want into Power BI. Power BI can bring directly data from the web page into Power BI on a live basis, and based on that actually then start doing correlation regression analysis around that. So I am assuming you are looking at interest rates and bank base rates, and what is your basically mortgages, for example, savings, for example, all those kind of behavior patterns.
No, not sorry, I was you guys were talking, so not necessarily, yeah, sort of growth rates by country, so GDP, inflation, obviously, in terms of trying to pull that through. So you can look at it. We have a global business, so it's good to look at it across different territories. You mentioned something around segmentation and sector. So we have a challenge with our customer data where we struggle sometimes to get the correct sector classification. In the UK, you have the SIC code, so that helps. But at a global business, how have you overcome that challenge before with other organizations?
So it's in the Western world, so UK, US, and a lot of the Europe stuff, you can get basically government data to get segmentation. Like in UK, you got SIC, and you got also Companies House, which where there is certain amount of segmentation around it. So you can do that. But then when you go to Asia Pacific or Latin American countries, then there is an ability in Power BI to basically do it manually as well at the end of the day. Or create basically again, if there is any automated input, then you take any automated input and then overlay it with the override. So we tend to use override a lot. uh, in a global business like yours that you are referring to, Alpesh, I would always say that take your actuals into a EPM CPM tool where you can validate customer profiles, you can validate things like that, and then put into the BI tool, because then you will actually benefit a lot more, because you can use this not only to do forecasting and budgeting, but you can use this for data cleansing as well. Think of it that way. And it is worth it. If you're a global business, then, like a 10 or 15,000 pounds per annum cost, but something that helps you solve your data problems is definitely going to be worth it. It's things like that's the way to get around it. Like with Xerox, we've done that as well. With Xerox also, we've got a lot of override section for them to then be able to correct stuff for data coming especially from Asia Pacific. Because Asia Pacific, the data tends to be a bit questionable.
Okay. No, thanks.
Yeah, so that's a possibility as well. Anybody else? I mean, these are good conversations because these are real data challenges which finance functions have. So,
I mean, just a general question on how long does it take to build the platforms? How, I'm fairly new to this in terms of how have you built. So within Power BI, is the AI functionality already there? You just need to, yeah.
It is the cheapest AI tech you will get on the planet. It is £7.50 a month in UK and $10 generally a month.
So it is
per
an add-on.
user.
It is an add-on.
No. So okay, refresh. So Power BI is free, but the free version is only a single user. So you cannot make a dashboard and share with somebody else. So any enterprise level implementation or company level implementation, we basically recommend pay per user, which is $10 a user. If you are like a Xerox, which Xerox has an enterprise solution where they pay for the enterprise level, and then everybody within Xerox has got access to Power BI. They don't pay additional per user. So there are two options to work with. But once you pay that, AI is not on top. AI is part of your basic package.
Yeah, we already have. So there's a couple of my team on the call, Jason. I think we haven't looked at it in depth in terms of how we can start using that.
You already have the magic then in your hand, my friend. You're just not leveraging it. Leverage it.
Tejas, I have another question on that. Where I work currently, they're using Tableau, and they seem to have been historically a bit of a Tableau house. But one of the things I notice is very slow performance with some of the dashboards, even when they're not particularly complicated. So they're not reporting across many dimensions. What kind of limits have you hit any limits with Power BI in terms of the underlying data that's building up the dashboards, or the type of dashboards you shared?
Okay, I can't show you the dashboard. Apologies, first of all, but the biggest dashboard I have built is with basically Xerox for around 15 to 20 million line items in their actual table, and around 6 million line items in their budget and forecast tables, essentially. Okay, combining all of that, it happens in close to fraction of seconds. You change month, you change division, you change basically customer, you change whatever you want to change. It is as good as it gets. I am clearly not a Tableau fan. I apologize if anybody on here is. I am not. It is 60 pounds on an average a user, if I'm not mistaken, or 40 to 60 pounds a user. Power BI is 10, right? And Power BI is being invested by Microsoft. Every month you get new functionality. Every month.
Yeah. I mean, I'm converted on it. Yeah, I'm just they're a Tableau house, so I'm trying to wean them a bit towards Power BI, not least of which is on cost, but also because of the integration with other Microsoft products. I mean, they're not going to go away anytime soon, are they? I'm not saying Tableau will, but yeah.
Steve, I tell you, at Xerox, they were a Tableau house as well. They were sick and tired of the blue circle of death, which keeps going around, and I have seen it. Like they used to run some reports in Power BI in Tableau, and basically blue circle of death goes round and round and round. I implemented Power BI for them, connecting it to Anaplan and to their data lake. Essentially, they are like, this is enormous. It's unbelievably fast. I'm like, yeah, it's Power BI. I mean, like literally, you can't. It runs because it's a relationship database. I mean, I'm not going to go techie on people, but it is not a OLAP cube. It's a relationship database. So that means it doesn't need to store all that data and then look into it. It only looks up the relevant data based on the question asked, travels down that relationship and only gives you the relevant information, and therefore is a lot faster. Whereas Tableau and some of the other solutions tend to be a bit more OLAP cube, meaning they would have to take my 15 million lines of actuals and 6 million lines of basically budget, combine it together into some trillions of lines, because it's not even 21 million. They would have to multiply it. And therefore it becomes few trillion. And then the engine is trying to analyze it. It's going to take you forever. Because the tech stack at the bank is a OLAP cube, which is not. That is the reason why even in Anaplan, I implement Anaplan as well. But when we implement Anaplan as well, we said don't do analytics in Anaplan. Anaplan is fantastic in planning. Do planning, do driver-based forecasting, do budgeting in Anaplan. Don't do analytics in Anaplan. Analytics go to Power BI.
Yeah.
So that's the way to look at it, right?
I mean, how does it work? We have Salesforce, SAP, sort of Amex GPT for travel data for carbon. Would you recommend the data or APIs directly into Power BI?
So, Alpesh, the short answer is there is direct API from Salesforce and, sorry, what is the second system you said? Salesforce, SAP. So SAP and Salesforce have got direct API to Power BI. I don't think the third one you said has. But I would still recommend a data lake solution because tomorrow from SAP you decided to shift to Oracle for whatever reason, or you decided to go to Dynamics for whatever reason. Okay, what are you going to do? Right, you're going to reinvent the whole wheel. Whereas if you take your transactional level data, you've got a GL account column, you've got a cost center column, you've got your month column, all of that data is already sitting here. All you do is basically bung your new source into the table and it just continues. So you take the old ERP out, put the new ERP in. This manages the mess essentially, and your end users are still fine. Because I will repeat it, it's a Power BI is a BI tool, business intelligence tool, right? It's not a finance tool only. So it's not like only you or your team is going to use it. What we encourage our customers, like with Curve as well, we are now working with them to put security so that they can give it to the front end users. So the business users directly. Now, every 6 months or every 2 years, I can't go to the business users and say, oh, by the way, all your Power BI dashboards are gone. I'm going to give you new ones. They are going to get sick of us. Whereas you maintain that customer experience, give them stable BI, manage the mess there.
And is the data, are you saying the data lake's a live update? So if you, even if you had Workday, for example, Salesforce, SAP, etc.
Exactly. So at Xerox, they update, because they are obviously Xerox, they update their Snowflake instance every, I think, 4 hours or 5 hours, even during month end. Whereas smaller organizations like Cine Media and stuff, they used to do it every 2 hours because the data is just not that big. It's 500 million business. So it's just not that big. So every 2 hours, the data lake updates. So that is the reason why I got the recommendation from those guys, because every 2 hours, the data is going from the ERP into the data lake, into BI, and basically the controllers can see the P&L without closing the books. You don't have to run a trial balance to look at the P&L. They can see the P&L already. And therefore, they're already seeing, oh, the accrual journal is wrong, or this is whatever, depreciation is off, or whatever, All those anomalies can come out immediately. Instant.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, good, thanks.
No, anytime, my friend, anytime. Any more for any more? Come on, apart Alpesh and Steve, I'm sure others have questions as well, man. No? John, Emma? No? Cool. Alpesh, any more?
No, I think we've done all right. I was going to ask you about e-commerce and the transactional data, and whether you've built dashboards on e-commerce. We have heap analytics, which is quite good in terms of looking at the customer journey, sessions, traffic, conversion, etc. But again, even on intuitive charts, etc. But this is where I think having market or external data, what's a good conversion rate, what's a good bounce rate for a comparable size organization. But because I don't want things to be too inward looking. You need that market sort of landscape as well. So yeah.
Yeah, but again, Alpesh, I will say my experience, again, I'm just sharing, is take one step at a time. Right. So I always work with businesses. I say, start with what your definition is. Look at what the market definition of, good customer journey, start point, end point looks like, things like that, and get your own data sorted first before you start comparing it yourself to the market. Because sometimes what happens is the outside information becomes overwhelming, and then the internal information is not the quality of it's not your performance is bad, it's the quality of information is not comparable to what you're getting from outside. If that makes sense.
That's true.
So it's a journey. Again, I've done in my past on my website, there is recordings on my YouTube channel, the recordings of my previous webinars from last year as well. I've always consistently maintained finance transformation or FP&A transformation is an evolution. There is no transformation. You evolve. Take one step, settle down, take second step, settle down, third step, settle down. That way, then you evolve into a much more mature organization. Then the journey never finishes. I mean, anybody telling you in 3 months they're going to come in and implement a bunch of dashboards and they're going to change your life, that's not going to change your life. I will not say that either. we will say, yeah, we'll start the transformation. These are the first bunch of dashboards. Look at them. Now let's look at the second bunch. Now let's look at the third bunch. And then, because it's a discovery for you of the tech stack and the tech capabilities. It's discovery for the guys who are implementing for what your business is required. So both ways is a learning process, right? And that takes time.
Great. No, brilliant. Thanks.
Cool. Any more? Steve? Anybody else? Any more? We are on the top of the hour. So any more? Cool. We will be sharing a recording of this anyway. So this recording will go out to all of you. Many thanks for taking the time. Thank you for your engagement and thank you for actually staying around slightly longer than the 1 hour because it is important, right? And again, I am on LinkedIn. I will put my LinkedIn up again. I think most of you have anyway found me through LinkedIn, have come here from LinkedIn. My calendar is on there as well. Please feel free if you want to have a one-to-one conversation, if you're shy to talk in a group environment, reach out on LinkedIn, reach out on Calendly and book some time with me. No obligation discussion. I'm a passionate finance professional first. I am a consultant and a founder after. So very happy to have a discussion with fellow finance professionals, look at, because this is a challenge. How can we do this better? Very, very happy to have that conversation without promise not being salesy. Absolutely. So very happy to have that conversation. Do let me know. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. And I hope to see you in future webinars. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.